We are more concerned about our reputation with other people than about our conscience with ourselves. We are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. To write a good love letter, you ought to begin without knowing what you mean to say, and to finish without knowing what you have written. The first man who, having fenced in a piece of land, said, "This is mine," and found people naive enough to believe him, that man was the true founder of civil society. The source of all suffering is the attachment to the self. Liberty is not the power of doing what we like, but the right to do what we ought. All injustice comes from the selfishness of the individual. In any case, the remedy is not to diminish the riches and power of the great, but to increase the divisions and multiply the ranks of the common people. The richest are the most diligent and the most zealous in their desire to acquire and are always in a hurry. Nothing is more dangerous than the influence of private interests in public affairs. Man is so much the voice of his own interest that it is seldom he can be right where he is not disinterested. Nature never deceives us. It is always we who deceive ourselves. The savage lives within himself, while social man lives outside himself and can only live in the opinion of others. Liberty is not the power of doing what we like, but the right to do what we ought. The sweetest of all sounds is praise. All men would be tyrants if they could. I prefer liberty with danger to peace with slavery. The human heart has so many crannies where vanity hides, so many holes where falsehood lurks, is so decked out with deceiving hypocrisy, that it often dupes itself. To be sane in a world of madmen is in itself madness. Virtue is a state of war, and to live in it we have always to combat with ourselves. Man is not what he thinks he is, but what he thinks he is. Man was born free, and he's everywhere in chains. Virtue in obscurity is better than vice in the spotlight. Man is weak, full of errors, without government, and liable to mistake his own interest. Man knows nothing at all, but needs something infinite. The greatest wisdom is to realize one's lack of it. Our self-esteem is our self-judgment, which is nothing but our own verdict about ourselves. Man is the creature of circumstances. The greatest thing in the world is to know how to belong to oneself. Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes. Man is the artificer of his own happiness. The person who has lived the most is not the one with the most years, but the one with the richest experiences. The more we perfect the arts, the less we succeed in the imitation of nature. We are never further from what we wish than when we believe that we possess it already. I love those who yearn for the impossible. The more one loves, the less one feels. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Man is not what he thinks he is, but what he thinks he is. Truth is always in harmony with herself, and is not concerned chiefly to reveal the justice that may consist with wrongdoing. Falsehood has an infinity of combinations, but truth has only one mode of being. The strongest is never strong enough to be always the master, unless he transforms strength into right and obedience into duty. Morality is no more the doctrine of how we may make ourselves happy than astronomy is the doctrine of how the sun goes round the earth. The public is a ferocious beast. One must either chain it up or flee from it. We are rarely proud when we are alone. Man is so much the voice of his own interest that it is seldom he can be right where he is not disinterested. You will find something more in woods than in books. Trees and stones will teach you that which you can never learn from masters. Love, like fire, cannot subsist without continual movement and activity. It ceases to exist as soon as it ceases to hope or fear. Virtue is a state of war, and to live in it we have always to combat with ourselves. Ambition is an idol on whose wings great minds are carried, only too extreme, to be sublimely great or to be nothing. No one is so miserable as the poor person who maintains the appearance of wealth. I love those who can smile in trouble, who can gather strength from distress and grow brave by reflection. 'Tis the business of little minds to shrink, but they whose heart is firm, and whose conscience approves their conduct, will pursue their principles unto death. The person who has lived the most is not the one with the most years, but the one with the richest experiences. Most people would rather trust their luck than their judgment. The only way to deal with an unjust world is to become so absolutely free that your very existence is an act of rebellion. The body politic, as well as the human body, begins to die as soon as it is born and carries in itself the causes of its destruction. Man is naturally good, and it is only through corruption that he becomes evil. Our greatest enemies, the ones we must fight most often, are within. A heart in love with beauty never grows old. The world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. The world of reality has its limits. The world of imagination is boundless. The first step towards success is taken when you refuse to be a captive of the environment in which you first find yourself. In conferring all their power upon their rulers, men had made them no less their equals than their masters. I prefer liberty with danger to peace with slavery. Man is free, but his freedom ceases when he has no faith in it. The man who has no inner life is the slave of his surroundings. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. There is no subjection so perfect as that, which keeps the consciousness of it from the enslaved, and they become the willing instruments of their own misery. Man is a vain creature and the most in love with himself of all the animals. Freedom, apart from works, is a mere empty sound. The less one thinks, the more one believes. A state is better governed which has few laws, and those laws strictly observed. There is nothing so gentle as man in his primitive state, when placed by nature at an equal distance from the stupidity of brutes and the fatal enlightenment of civil man. There is no art that teaches us to know ourselves, but the art of conversation shows us our ignorance. The imagination is the spur of delights. All depends upon it. It is the mainspring of everything. Now is it not by means of the imagination one knows joy? Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. Compassion is the basis of all morality. Man is weak, full of errors, without government, and liable to mistake his own interest. Happiness is a good that is not achieved by pursuing it. The one who is not happy with himself can never be happy with others. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. For each individual to obey the general will, he must first learn to obey himself. All authority of any kind, especially in the field of thought and understanding, is the most destructive, evil thing. Leaders destroy the followers, and followers destroy the leaders. You have to be your own leader and your own follower. The strongest is never strong enough to be always the master, unless he transforms strength into right and obedience into duty. Man is free, but his freedom is to obey the law. The strongest is never strong enough to be always the master, unless he transforms strength into right and obedience into duty. Freedom can only be given to a rational being, and is therefore connected with one's duty and not with one's wants. Force does not constitute right. Obedience is due only to legitimate powers. Man's real life is happy, chiefly because he is ever expecting that it soon will be so. The general will is always right, but the judgment which guides it is not always enlightened. A citizen of America will cross the ocean to fight for democracy, but won't cross the street to vote in a national election. To live without philosophizing is the inhuman life. The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. Duty is what one expects from others. We are easily duped by that which we love. One can be forced to be free. In the state of nature, all men are born equal, but they cannot continue in this equality.